A lot of people ask me what type of camera they should buy for surf photography, and it's probably obvious to you that you need a camera in order to take these photos, but there are a few different broad categories that I want to cover which will help you understand if you need a different type of camera. Let's go for action cameras at the start. The big player in this space is GoPro. There's lots of other options, but GoPro has definitely done the best job of popularizing and probably inventing these cameras. I've used them since, well, I've had a 35mm GoPro, wrist mounted one, and I've had the AAA battery style GoPro, which was great as well, and all the way up until one of the more recent ones. I think the latest model I have is the Hero 4, before I decided that was probably the best GoPro I'll ever need. So a GoPro is great for shooting video, obviously. That's probably why you've got one if you have got one, and why you're thinking about getting one. But it's also good for still photos if there's a reasonable amount of light, because you have very limited control of the settings. So if you want to get a crisp in focus shot, you need to have quite a high shutter speed. A GoPro will do that for you in 90% of situations when you're shooting surf photos, because there will be enough light. But in those 10% where it's quite dark, then the shutter speed will slow down and you'll get some blur in the wave. I'll be going into this in much more detail in the settings sections of the course. So essentially, if it's quite well lit, anytime during the day, not really early morning or really late evening, but anytime during the day, and you want to shoot inside a wave, so you want that really wide angle, which kind of exaggerates everything that's close to you, especially small waves look quite big. Bigger waves tend to be compressed a little bit and it kind of meets in the middle, but if you've got a relatively small wave and you want it to make it look great and it's well lit and you want to be inside the barrel and shoot really wide angle, then a GoPro is what you need. It'll do the job, and there's lots of accessories you can get which will help you out. You can also shoot with a GoPro over-under split style shots if you get the right accessories too. So if that's really what you're after, then do consider a GoPro with the right accessories. Go through that in much more detail later on. So there's action cameras. That's the kind of photo you're going to be getting. Everything's in focus, everything's wide angle, you see lots of the scene, and you need pretty good light. If those tick your boxes for your surf photos, your quid's in, grab yourself a GoPro or something similar and some accessories. Next type of camera would be a mobile phone, believe it or not. With the introduction of things like the Axis Go housings for the iPhone series and various other things, Watershot do them as well, and other people do different housings for different models of mobile phone. The cameras on mobile phones have been getting much better over the last few years. You're probably aware of the limitations as well, because if it's very dark, if you're inside, if it's late at night inside, then it does struggle quite a lot to come out with a really clean image. But saying that, it's probably better than a point and shoot camera would be a couple of years ago even. So you could get really good shots with just your mobile and a housing, even just if it's lineup shots that you're after from the beach, but wide angle, as if you just walked down to check the beach. Mobile phone again, really good option. So don't dismiss it as an option if those are the type of shots you want to get. There are options to, especially with housings, to adapt that camera lens into a wider lens, so you can have like a screw-on lens that sits in front of your camera lens, which makes it wider, and that allows you to get more shots, a bit more like the GoPro style shots, wide angle in the tube, or even over-under shots if you get the right accessories with a dome port, for instance. So there's a few different options there. Mobile phone shooting, there's a few limitations, but honestly it's come on leaps and bounds even in the last couple of years. Do consider that as an option if those are the type of shots you want to take. Next type of surf photo that's quite common is a long range shot from the beach. So often this will be an action shot, someone doing a turn or pulling into a barrel, or even just doing a bottom turn, or someone learning to surf, big smile on their face, arms spread wide, that kind of shot that people are really happy with when you get that. So I see this as being someone who perhaps wants to document someone learning to surf, whether that's a friend or a loved one, or whether that's as part of a surf school, for instance. Perhaps if you wanted to sell your photos to people who are at the beach, then this is obviously a really popular type of shot. Anything like that, or training as well. If you're helping someone train and improve their surfing, then this is the type of photo that you might want to do. I mean, obviously you'd be shooting video, I think, for the training aspect, but the same rules apply for video and photo in this case. So the type of camera you're going to want to go for, you've got a few options, as in most of these cases, But the one thing that would do that really well, if you didn't want to do any of the other stuff, would be something like what used to be called a bridge or a super zoom camera, which is a camera body with a lens built in. You can't remove it. It's physically attached permanently to the camera body, that has a really big zoom range. So there's quite a few examples. Probably the most high profile, the most popular one for surf photography and action sports would be the Sony RX10 series. And these can get quite expensive, but the reason is there's obviously a lot of technology built into the body, and the lens itself, to get an equivalent lens on an interchangeable lens camera system, which is your other option, would cost many times, usually many times the price of this all-in-one unit that you're getting. So benefits are, you never change the lens, so there's no chance of getting any dust on your sensor or anything like that. It's all in one, so you just chuck it in your bag and you know it's good to go. Often they have quite a small sensor size, which can adversely affect the quality of your images because it makes them more noisy. I'll go into more detail into why that is later on in the course, but for now all you need to know is if it's low light, sunset, dawn, or a really cloudy day, then you might well have less clean images than you would do if you had a interchangeable lens camera with a big lens. But saying that, it's going to make it easier to get things in focus. Often with a good bridge camera or super zoom camera, the focusing is pretty good because they've built it with the built-in lens in mind. They don't have to take account of any other types of lenses. They've just got one lens to deal with. They've got one sensor. They know exactly what's going on, so they can really tune the performance to that equipment that's all built in to one piece, and they can really make the most of that. So if you're looking to shoot beginners learning to surf or any of the things I mentioned in this section, then you might want to look at one of these super zoom cameras that is capable of getting really close into the action with a big zoom lens and recording it nice and fast, and getting everything you need in that one package. The number one type of camera that I'm asked about, and the number one type of camera that I use to shoot my own surf photography, is an interchangeable lens camera. Now, they come in lots of different sizes and brands and forms, but essentially there's two main types that you'll see. There's DSLR, which stands for digital single lens reflex. Basically it means it's got a mirror inside which helps with the focusing, and when you press the button the mirror flips up and the image hits the sensor and that's recorded. And there's the other type, which is mirrorless, which, as you can imagine, doesn't have that mirror in place. It has it essentially uses the sensor itself to focus, so it doesn't need a mirror. And there's a lot of pros and cons, and you probably know a few people who shoot with each. And I've done both myself. I've shot with a DSLR for a long time. I've used Canon and Nikon, and I've also shot with mirrorless cameras. I've used Panasonic and Sony, and there are other options out there for both of these, and Canon and Nikon have their own mirrorless systems as well as DSLRs, so it can all get a bit confusing. But essentially these two cameras I'm putting in the same category because the main thing you can do with them that you can't with the other cameras I've talked about is change the lens. So this is a Sony a6500, this is a Sony 35mm lens, and as you can see I can take it off and put it back on. And what that allows me to do is have completely different types of photo with one camera. It's a modular system, so I have, whereas with a GoPro I could just shoot wide angle, with the 6500 I put a fisheye lens on here and I can shoot very, very similar photos to that GoPro. With the super zoom camera I can shoot, to be fair, it's quite a good range. I can't shoot fisheye with it, but I can shoot probably the normal style photos we talked about with the mobile, and long distance from the beach style photos. So with this one I'd swap the lens out for a big lens. I can shoot from the beach. This is the 35mm lens, which gives me an equivalent focal length for 50mm. I've got a whole section on equivalents, so bear in mind there's different size sensors and things like that which you will have to deal with if you choose to go down this road, but it's not as complicated as it seems. I'll explain it in a future video. Essentially this gives me that normal field of view, which roughly recreates our human vision, and that's kind of my favorite way to shoot in the water. So I've got all of those cameras essentially built into one thing. Now obviously to do the fisheye shots I need a water housing, and I'll go through lots of details on which one to get and what I would recommend if you did want to shoot in the water. And obviously from the land I'm going to need to buy a bigger lens, so I'm going to have maybe 2 or 3 lenses in order to cover all of those same types of photos. But essentially you buy the camera once, and then you buy a different lens for each type of photo you want, and a housing if you want to shoot in the water, for instance. You accessorize this one camera body, and that allows you to do lots of things. And then the big bonus, I guess, is if they release a new one of these, then you just get rid of that one, bring in the new one, and pop this on, which I've done with the A6000, which is an amazing value camera, which is probably the one I'd recommend to the majority of people who want to shoot surf photos with an interchangeable lens camera, the Sony Alpha 6000. Everyone calls it the A6000. And I had all the same lenses work on this camera that work on that one. And there's lots to go into in terms of lenses. And in fact, lenses was the most popular, most requested topic for a video course. So I will be going into lots of detail on lenses. But I just wanted to cover really briefly the pros and cons, or the really quickly get you to the right answer. If you only want to do one of these types of photos, then you don't need to worry about this. All you need to do is go along, grab a super zoom camera, grab a GoPro camera, whichever suits your needs, and you'll be getting photos within the week that you'll be really happy with. And obviously you can go through the other videos and find out the techniques you need to use in order to get those photos and improve them. But there's going to be lots and lots for people who've decided that they want to take on 2, 3, every different type of surf photo that you can imagine, you're going to be able to take with one of these. And that's it for cameras for now. I'll go into a bit more detail, as I said, on various different videos in the future. But for now, let's get moving on to the next video. Feel free to skip around and find a video that's going to be up your street, so you can start taking surf photos that you're proud of.